Hey, hello and welcome back to setting up your QNAP NAS for the very first time without letting the NAS connect to the internet. This is part 2. We've done lots of stuff in part 1, much longer, where we set up the device for the first time, set up our RAID, set up map network drives, we did a nice SCSI target, we set up snapshots, we did all of that stuff without utilizing the internet. But of course, we did utilize the internet on my laptop to download certain applications such as the firmware and desktop clients and more, all for the NAS. I strongly recommend that you watch part 1 before watching this, because we do talk a lot about the nature of accessing the NAS only via the network or directly between your PC and the NAS itself. But in today's video, we're going to look at applications. We're going to look at apps that I recommend that you take advantage of, and how to set a few of them up for the very first time. In part 3, I'll be looking at synchronization in a great deal more detail between your local machine and the NAS. But for now, we're going to look at a number of these key apps. But once again, I've got to remind you that we are not connected to the internet. So if we go into the App Center here and we try to connect, as you can see, we can't connect to the App Center because we're not connected to the internet. The same as the NAS, trying to synchronize with the QNAP server for the updates, because some people like to use their NASs completely severed from the internet but want it on the network. This video is very much for you. So once again, these are the apps I'm recommending. We have installed QBoost already, but as you can see, we've got Hybrid Backup Sync. We're going to go with Security Counselor, Malware Remover, Multimedia Console, QSync, Container Station, QVR Pro for surveillance, Hybrid Desk Station for HDMI NAS, QMaggie for photo recognition, and the AI Core on the NAS. But remember, none of these are going to need the internet to run day to day. The reason we've had to download them is so that my laptop can download them from the internet, as you can see here in our download folder from QNAP's own website. Again, check out part 1 for more information on this. And from here, we're going to go ahead and start installing these apps. So in order to do it, we go back into the App Center, as mentioned earlier on. There'll be a pop-up here telling you a little bit more information about the App Center. But again, we can go ahead and we can cancel that if we choose to never come again. And we can go ahead and start installing apps. So head up here to the top and select Install Manually. From here, click Browse onto your local PC and then find an application you want to install. So first one I'm going to install is Hybrid Backup Sync. And then we click Install. We're saying that we want to install it and then click OK. And it's that straightforward. I'm sorry if the noise from my laptop in the background, if the fan is ramping up. We are using OBS screen recording here throughout this video, so this will make a difference with regards to the audio in the background, because we are running a network-only setup. And as you can see in part 1, I was connecting directly point to point with the NAS with a single Ethernet cable. Consequently, we're in quite close proximity with the device, which is of course affecting background noise and ambient that makes it very tough for me to remove during this recording. So it's that straightforward to install an application. If you want to do it manually, just remember that you have to go to QNAP's own website, select the download tab there, which will open up like this, and then you can select the App Center tab, which opens up here, and then you can go ahead and install lots of applications. And although I'm only touching on a bunch of applications today, I will highlight that there are loads of applications with different utilities out there for you to use. So do take a moment to look through them, and you can filter through which ones are third party, first party, and more. As you can see, the app has finished installing. So if we come out of it there, come out there, we can go in. And as you can see, Hybrid Backup Sync is installed. Hybrid Backup Sync is the multi-tiered tool that allows you to create a completely customized backup strategy, where your NAS can back up to USBs, it can back up to other NASs on the network, it can create synchronization jobs with the cloud and more. But bear in mind, if you are running an offline setup, then there's a very good chance that most of these options aren't going to be useful to you. Such as the cloud, where of course if you can't synchronize with the cloud because you've got no internet, you're not going to be able to use it. And of course, this is something that's ongoing right now with Amazon's Drive, where they are discontinuing support of a number of different NAS Brand and not allowing connection between these systems. So now, as you can see, QNAP do state in the background they will occasionally collect diagnostic and statistical information, but again, if you're not connected to the internet, that's not going to be a problem. So as you can see here, HBS3 there's a normal snapshots telling you what you can do and all the different options that are open to you. But if you go ahead, again, we're not going to bother looking at that next time. We can see that from here with Hybrid Backup Sync 3, we can go with different options to synchronize our devices. So the first option, you've got backup and restore there, where you can back up the NAS to another NAS or vice versa. With lots of options here. So again, create a brand new backup job if we choose. We choose a folder on the NAS. So we go for the shared folder from earlier. We'll go for it there. We can see there's a USB drive there as well. And from there, we can click Next. It should be highlighted actually, I didn't mention that. If you have another NAS on the local area network, you can map that as a network drive if you choose right there as well, which can be very, very useful. But for now, we're going to map that shared drive. Now it will ask us what kind of backup we want to run. Bear in mind that because we're not connected to the internet, these ones aren't going to be suitable. These are all cloud-based. So you can either back up to another folder on the same NAS, or if you have another NAS in the local area network, and it doesn't have to be QNAP, you can direct your NAS at it. Just enter the IP, which is that number there at the top, directly into the IP and host name, getting the port correct. So again, 8080 if you choose. Detect the server, enter the login information, so the username and the password of that, run a speed test to make sure it works, and then you can create the backup strategy between the two of them. For now, I'm going to select local NAS, but bear in mind I don't actually recommend local NAS as a backup job because then you're putting all your eggs in one basket. I'm just going to use local NAS just to show you what the rest of the screens will look like. So from here, we've got the local folder that we selected. So now we're going to back it up onto that external drive. We want to select that USB drive I've connected. Click OK. And as you can see, now we've got the local folder that we selected and we're backing it up onto that USB drive that I've got connected. For those that aren't aware, the USB drive is new volume. That's the one there. And if we make our way into the storage manager, we're able to see the external storage, and there is the external drive that we're utilizing there. Again, I'm sorry, the laptop, I can hear the fan ramping up there, and I am trying to remove it from the background, but it's a bit of a problem. So there we go. We can give the job a name or a description if we choose, and we can go ahead and click Next. We can then set a schedule for this backup job. It can be automatic each time the drive is connected, so this is for the USB backup. Have it on a schedule at a certain time of day, or run the job after different jobs that you've created are kicked in. If you do look at the other tabs there, there's also versioning management, where if you want to have files retained in multiple copies that reflect changes, you can go ahead and select these options here and have the right number of versions over time. And of course, have data integrity checks happening in real time on that data as it passes through. Lots of little checks there to happen on each and every backup. Next, we can look at the filters, and this will allow us to either make sure that certain file types, maybe ISOs or larger files, are not backed up, or system files that are quite useless will be removed from any backup routines, be it by the name of the file, the size of the file, or the modification date. If you're utilizing a more powerful NAS, you can take advantage of QDedupe. QDedupe is the system of, if you have similar files being backed up, or I say similar, identical files being backed up from multiple sources, such as the system information of Windows PCs, and you have multiple Windows PCs backing up to the NAS, you can ensure that the NAS only holds one copy of the file, but multiple sources can draw backup from it. I'm going to disable that for now, but for now we can go ahead and click Next. And there you go, we just need to confirm the job setting. As you can see, it's the local NAS on that shared folder and backing up to the USB, and then we click Create. And there we go. It's saying that the data integrity checks are available if we want them. But there is our backup job. We didn't set a schedule, but had we set a schedule, it will allow it to kick off then. But we can just manually go ahead and click that backup now. Now it's worth highlighting there's actually no real data in this folder that we've selected. There's some snapshots that we're taking advantage of in the background, but that's about it. But that data will be backed up in that schedule that we're creating. It's a very short backup because there's no data in there. But now if we set that on a schedule, that folder we've selected, or multiple folders if we choose, will back up onto that USB drive. Now, as mentioned, there are lots and lots of different backup routines. Synchronization, for example, not really a backup, allows you to choose two locations, such as one folder on two NASes, to synchronize either in one direction or both. I've done whole videos on HBS3 and I recommend you check them out. And as long as you're using offline resources and just NASes on the network, you should be able to utilize this without the internet. Jobs that you've created will all be listed here, and you can create a schedule of jobs to see what's coming and what you want to cancel or delay as needed. And finally, you can use more system bespoke backup options such as Apple Time Machine for Mac here and rsync and real-time remote replication. Although once again, bear in mind that there's a good chance that these options require you to use internet accessible and off-site assets. Generally, these will require the internet. And finally, USB One Touch Backup is a USB dedicated version of the backup we just created. So instead of having to go through the apps, you can have it so that as soon as a preset or indeed any USB drive is backed up, you can create a bespoke backup routine via USB onto that drive, which you can then disconnect and take home or store in another room or another building, or have one that's constantly being backed up over time on a schedule. You can even use the button on the front of the NAS to do it. So that's an example of one very key application. And as mentioned, there's lots of key applications here, each of which will take a little bit of time to install. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and install all of these applications now so you don't have to sit around and wait. I'm going to install Malware Remover, Multimedia Console, QSync, Security Console, QMAGI Container, QVR Pro, HD Station for HDMI NASes, and more. I'm going to install these apps and then we're going to quickly go through them to see if you need these in your NAS setup. Let's fast forward to when I've installed all of these apps. Right, so now we've installed a plethora of QNAP applications. I'm going to go through all of these one by one, some in more detail than others based on their importance, and hopefully give you some idea about which of the applications you should think about installing very early doors on your QNAP NAS. Because remember, if you don't intend to connect this NAS to the internet, then chances are you're not really going to be doing this very often. So it's better to make sure you do all of this early doors quite straightforwardly, like so. But one thing I will touch on very, very early is the question of taking advantage of a number of these applications for security. So built in is the QNAP Security Counselor. Now, chances are one of the main reasons you've decided to make sure that your QNAP NAS is not connected to the internet is because you are concerned with its security, you're concerned with people trying to hack in, you're worried about lots of those things where if you are putting all of your eggs into this NAS, and of course you want to make sure you've got a backup strategy, if you are connecting this to the internet, you want to know that you've got safety nets, you want to know you've got backups, you want to know that you've got perimeter defenses. Now, the Security Counselor does this by analysing the setup of your NAS, making recommendations for applications and tools on your system and making sure it tells you if there's gaps in your fence, your security. Now, you can submit the information to QNAP, but once again, there's not a lot of point doing that if you're not connected to the internet, so I'm just going to say no for now. As you can see, it's just basically letting you know all the different things with your device, giving recommendations. It'll have a look at passwords. It'll say how secure do you want this NAS to be. So for now, let's run a quick scan. We're going to do a basic security policy for now, and this will effectively check the device for things that are on it. Right now you can see that we're enabling the security checkup. It's told us there is 2 areas of risk on our NAS so far. Malware remover I'm going to go to in a bit, and of course you can install antivirus from the App Center, but of course because we don't have the internet connected we can't download McAfee. But if we make our way into the download center, we can go ahead, App Center there, we can find McAfee just along here. I believe it's McAfee anyway. I can never remember which one they use. But there's definitely antivirus software readily available here in the App Center. I'm drawing a blank. I know it's on there somewhere. You know what? Virus. I'm sure it's there. Find it for me. There we go. We can go ahead and I can download that tool there and do it manually if you choose to want to use that based on the recommendations from your QNAP. We'll leave that there in the background. So if we look at that report of the 2 things at risk, we can see there at the bottom, the NAS cannot connect to the internet. They're saying that is a risk. Again, that is a relative term with regards to if you want to take advantage of accessing the internet in general. And what you can do is ignore this long term and not have to worry about it again. And the other one is the latest version of Malware Remover is not installed on a NAS. Of course, I've used an older download in the past. We can go ahead and install that tool if we choose. But again, that is giving you some idea about these applications and more on there. Same goes with the security policy. You can ask the NAS to do certain things for its security, such as do you want it to always use the latest version of the internet? Or do you want the device to change passwords periodically? Do you want it to check external connectivity, local connectivity and more? And there's lots of things to create a very tailored security system. And of course, because we've set the basic setup, we can, of course, change to another level rather than custom and really make things fantastically aggressive if we choose in terms of the ingoing and outgoing of our NAS at our own whim. Now again, we're not reporting the vulnerabilities because we're not connected to the internet, but of course you can do that and enable that. But otherwise, you can make sure that the secure advisor will check periodically every time you connect to the NAS in order to keep you updated on these. Or you can connect on the user account settings during setup and add your access credentials, email, phone number, that sort of thing for alerts. But again, you are keeping this device offline, and therefore there's no way for the NAS to utilize those unless you connect to the internet. So that's really up to you if and when you want to connect. You can even create a schedule for these scanned checks to happen every day, very, very quickly. You can have it one particular day of the week or every single day or just weekends, and have a certain time of day if you choose. So for now, let's say I'm going to let this scan happen every day, and we're going to let that scan happen around 1 a.m. So that means 1 a.m. this NAS is going to do a check, and again, maybe I'll upgrade that to an intermediate security policy there. It does it there, and it will ask, do we want to run a new security checkup? I'm going to say no for now, but it's one to bear in mind. So that's a security checkup. Again, what we should do really is install that antivirus as well. So let's go ahead and install that now. The one that we downloaded earlier, that will be there waiting for us. Where is it? Where did I install it? There it is there. Blind as a bat. Absolutely blind as a bat. We're going to let that install there. And again, you can't interact with the NAS when installing applications manually. If you were using the internet, it will allow you to install them. As you can see, it's warning that there isn't a connection to the internet, so it can't verify how modern that release is. Some tools, such as this one, may require a third-party license, which again may mean you have to connect the NAS to the internet potentially. If we make our way back into the Security Counselor, we can see that now the antivirus is enabled. We can open that up there. We can do a scan job of McAfee, call it scan 1, and that will check either all the folders on the NAS or a specific folder if we choose. If we go for all folders on the NAS, we can have that scan happening there. We can then set a schedule, and again, I'm going to do that frequency, scan it daily, once again 1 a.m. every single day, and that will scan all the files or just the quick files where it could be size based, and you can create exclusions for file types as well. Let that run there, and again you can change certain parameters to make sure it doesn't waste too much time on unnecessary files if you choose, and you can have it so that it only reports problems or have problems moved into quarantine, or automatically deletes problems as it goes. Again, I will be doing a dedicated video to QNAP security after these offline NAS setup videos very, very soon. I recommend you check that out. Again, the reason this is grey is I've not run that test yet because I don't want the system to be too busy when we're showing off some of these other things. So last is the malware remover. Now, this is QNAP's own malware removal tool. It's updated pretty regularly, and I would be, let's be totally frank to say that because they've had a couple of bits of bother, let's say that, with people not updating their firmware and things like QSnatch and QLocker, they have been a lot more proactive on malware remover than they have ever before. Now, this tool doesn't have to be just ran within here. It's doing an active scan there. If we come out the security counselor, we can choose to go directly into the malware remover here. And then from here, as you can see, it's running that scan. You can say if you want to send your results to QNAP, I'm going to say no, but of course, that's because we're not connected to the internet, and we can make sure that that scan happens at a reasonable time of day as well. So say daily, again, 1 AM, have it so that it updates itself regularly as well. You can say what you want it to do when it finds issues. You've even got the events log as well in QLog that tells you who's connecting and how. Lots of different options there, giving you real-time information about this. If we come out of that there, again, useful little tool, malware removal, but again, we all know it's part of a larger strategy. And again, quick scan, there's not much on this NAS, but it's done the scan, and to action the scan, you literally just click that middle button, and I've already created a schedule for it as well. So all of that run in the background. We've gone through those, we've gone through the security counselor, we've gone through that of the malware remover there. We've looked at McAfee as well. If you go into the control panel as well, there's lots of security stuff that you can do here. Just go straight into the security tab where you can look at connections to the device. You can say how many attempts things can have, whether they're accessing locally, externally, via the internet, via the network, or whatever. Same goes for account access, credentials, and protection. And if you want to use custom security certificates as well, or you need to download a fresh certificate for your browser, that can all be done there. You've even got the password policies as well. You can enable two-step verification as well. Lots of different options all the way through. But again, if you are utilizing this device without the internet connection, this is, very, very secure. But most of these are going to come down to whether you're using the internet or not, which is a completely different kettle of fish. And I think that's where a lot of people's concerns are about why they move away from the cloud. It's definitely something worth bearing in mind. So now we've looked at some of those other security elements, let's have a look at some of the day-to-day apps that we're going to utilize on this device. Now, if you are using the NAS for photos, video, music, as mentioned earlier, there are actually quite a lot of dedicated applications on here for multimedia, such as Music Station, Video Station, Photo Station, and all of these apps are pretty good. The reason I've not installed them for this is I wanted to keep things more file-led than anything, but I think it would be remiss not to highlight QMaggie. QMaggie is the photo recognition tool. So with QMaggie, it not only can see all the photos on your NAS, if you give it the right directories, of course, but on top of that, it will also recognize photos, things, elements, and more in the background. So in order to take advantage of that, the first thing we need to do is go to Multimedia Console. Multimedia Console allows us to set up our NAS, unsurprisingly, for multimedia. As you can see, it's not found any files. I have actually copied a pile of files onto the QNAP from a USB drive in the home folder. These are the files that we use for Plex Media Server, and there are photos inside. So why didn't the QNAP find them? Well, it's because I didn't tell the QNAP where they were. There are default albums that appear when you install Photo Station, Video Station, and Music Station, but a lot of people like to use their own custom setup. They don't want the NAS searching anywhere for photos and video and music. They want them to look in specific locations. So if we go to Content Management, we're looking at QMaggie. As you install more apps, they all appear here. What we can do is go to edit, and then tell the NAS where to look for photos. So if we go into that first folder, which was Homes, go into Plex Media Server, and then select Photos. It's as simple as that. We can even select the album pictures, although there are some duplicates. We're going to click Apply. It's found those two albums, and now they're added to the QMaggie database. And as you can see, it's already started indexing. It has already started checking those albums and finding photos. Now we can increase the priority. As you can see there, it's indexing the content there on the side, and it's now browsing those folders to add them to the photo database. Thumbnail generation will do the same, so that means that the NAS won't have to spend as much time later on displaying these photos nice and quickly via network connectivity. Transcoding is more based on video, and of course you'll need Video Station to take advantage of that. And as you add more and more multimedia apps, they will appear here. For those of you that want to enjoy multimedia on your smart TV, on your Fire Stick, or generally over DLNA, select this option here, and once again select Edit, and then just tell the NAS where you keep your multimedia. So in my case, in those folders I created, we'll let the Multimedia Manager access photos, music, the test files for Plex, and TV shows. And click Apply, and there you go. Now these albums will now be accessible via DLNA. If we choose, we can go and change some of the settings within the DLNA app so it can rescan more often or create a more customized setup, but we will need to install the multimedia add-on in order to do that, which means we'd have to head back into here and find the multimedia add-on in order to install it and proceed forward with that tool. So right now, if we go into QMaggie for photos, like so, it will tell us that it's already started scanning for photos. And as you can see, they've already started appearing. Pictures of my cat, lots of these photos that we've used. It's generating thumbnails, which can take a little longer, but as you see, with thumbnail generation, object recognition and facial recognition, it just takes a little bit of time in order for all of these photos to be present in each of these albums, allowing us to enjoy all the photos, photos, and in some cases video with AI-powered search. And remember, all of this is being done without access to the internet. This is all being done with just the NAS on the network. The only thing connected to the internet is my PC, and the PC isn't doing this work. It's the NAS doing the work. So with regards to photo recognition, I strongly recommend QMaggie. Now next, we can look at some other more specialized tools here on the NAS. If you want to take advantage of the NAS for backing up, back and forth, QSync is a great tool for sharing and synchronizing and backing up data between your local PC and the NAS. I am going to go into a lot more detail on QSync in my next video, where I talk a lot more about the desktop clients for Windows. But for now, QSync, the user interface on the NAS, allows you to see which data is going back and forth, how you want things to go in terms of configuration with the client utilities. Again, there's a mobile app too. I've done a whole video on QSync Pro for mobile. I recommend you check that out. And of course, connected users and their devices will all appear in here, along with the shared folders that you want to be visible on both devices. We've already gone through iSCSI targets and mapped network drives in the previous video, but these can all be very helpful too for a more native and stress-free synchronization. Think of QSync not as a backup tool really, but as synchronization. The ability to have two folders, one on the NAS, one on a PC, shared on different, if you choose, one folder on the NAS and one folder on 8 or 10 PCs, all synchronized, that allow all that data to be done natively in the background and visible. You've got the team folder as mentioned, and then moving forward, if you are sharing files with users, they appear here. And versioning control and now allows you to create images, if you will, or a historical data record where you can revert data back to old versions with different numbers of versions being retained. But just bear in mind how much space is occupied by these. A lot of this will make a lot more sense in part 3 of this series. As mentioned, there's also QVR Pro for surveillance, and again, you do not need internet access in order to do this. Once you've installed it with the app that you've downloaded via your laptop or PC, you can install it like so, click Start. It will check that you've got the right amount of memory, that you've got the right firmware, and you've got the right background environment for surveillance, and click Next. It will double check the time, see if it's correct or not. You'll confirm that they're right or not, click Apply, and it will go ahead and start installing the surveillance software. QVR Pro arrives with 8 camera licenses, and you can set up 8 cameras in your local area environment, no internet connectivity needed, and these cameras will all record and send alerts back and forth to this program. There's even a desktop tool that I will be showing you in the next video. So again, we'll come out of there and we can look at some of the other applications. Now, I know these are all quite dry apps, but it's worth highlighting that these are some of the key tools that you want to have a little look at when using a NAS without the internet. On that subject, let's talk about the network and virtual switch tool. This is the one that you would utilize in order to have a better understanding about what's going on in your network environment. We're just going to skip all of the steps. As you can see, I'm connected via that 2.5 GBE connection directly into my laptop. And as this is a 2-port NAS, this port here isn't being utilized, but if we wanted to, we could connect this to the internet. Now, if we switch to advanced mode, we can view a topographical viewpoint of the NAS and the available connections all the way through the system. It's a little bit technical, as one would expect, but there's still lots of information readily available to configure the right network environment for you. And again, do check out my video soon where we talk about setting up a QNAP NAS security features one by one, and where we will go into a little bit more detail on the network and virtual switch. But the majority of these settings aren't that important. Well, it's not that they're not important, but they aren't going to be as usable to a network-only environment, a non-internet connected environment there. So that's most of them done. You've got QLog Center, which you've already sort of seen, that keeps track of connections to and from the NAS constantly all the way through. And again, not a huge amount of configuration there, but it's worth highlighting that the system will give you errors during the course of this because it's trying to connect to the internet and it simply can't. So remember, having a NAS that's not connected to the internet will sometimes throw up fake alerts. And again, remember, all the way through this, if you feel like you're using too many resources and you want to check, you can look at the resource monitor that will give you information about the hardware being used. But on top of that, if you feel like memory consumption is too high while you're doing all these processes, go ahead and click QBoost down there and you can optimize and save a bunch. The same thing goes with junk files and some of the cached files in the background, all there. Things are just more technical, it has to be said, on the QNAP environment, and it can be intimidating for some, so do bear that in mind. And all of these options can be accessed here on the desktop. Let's get rid of that, close that. You can see we've saved a good chunk of memory there. We can come out of it there, and there is our desktop environment there. As you can see, QVR Pro is now finished and will ask us in the new tab to log into the NAS, which if we're already logged in, it will. And from here, we can then go ahead and see the user interface here. I've not got any cameras ready as we're utilizing a direct to network environment, but again, I'll make sure I've got a camera ready for the next part in this video. But for now, let's come out there. There's our security setup, and again, still no internet connected on this device with the QNAP running absolutely fine there. And again, we've gone through QSync, but I think I'm going to wrap things up there for this series. I think I've shown you guys just how easy it is to install applications on the device and how to set it up without the internet. Remember, there are loads more applications to use. Just make sure that, one, you bear in mind that the setup for today is not using the internet, so some of these tools are less appropriate without the internet. And of course, when utilizing the QNAP NAS and these apps, that you have to make sure that you're still able to access it locally on the network environment, which means that you can't just disconnect the NAS from the internet and not connect it to a switch or directly. So many people seem to think those two things are the same. They're just not. I hadn't even mentioned QFirewall. How terribly rude of me. I'll be sure to include QFirewall on the next video. But again, given that QFirewall is more of an external connectivity resource, it wasn't as appropriate in today's video, but it will be featured in the full security video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for part 3, where we will talk a lot more about desktop applications. It has to be said, these are the applications where you can install clients on your client apps on your PC or Mac, and these are the ones that interact with the NAS in a very native way, only using the network environment or internet if you choose. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in part 3 of this series.